So moving on to video number 2 now. In this video, I'd like to talk to you about a talk I gave recently at a local school about women and autism. How did I get involved in this? Well, my support worker supports a young girl who attends this school. It's a secondary school. I'm not going to give you the name of the school for confidentiality reasons, and but suffice to say it's a local school. And my support worker supports someone at the school. So this is how I got involved, and then she spoke to the head of support there, because I asked my support worker if she wouldn't mind doing that, because I was quite interested in maybe going into the school and providing some training or talking to the teachers, because this is something I'm really passionate about, is raising awareness of autism in schools. And I was really pleased when the head of support there agreed for me to come in. So I went and met her, and she listened to me speak a bit about what I had to offer, and she agreed for me to come into the school and talk to some of the teachers about autism and my experiences. I talked about autism and women because that's something that I know a fair amount about, and because I've already done a talk on this subject before, so I had it all typed out, ready to go, because I've given this talk many times before. So what happened was, this was in the afternoon, and this was on Monday. My support worker accompanied me. She met me at the station, so we walked down to the school together, which is just as well, because you have to walk down quite a busy road, and I would have felt quite nervous going out on my own. And we waited for all the kids to have left the building, because we waited for them to vacate the building, and when we went in, the building was pretty much deserted, so that was good. I gave a talk in a classroom. As I say, about 6 to 9 teachers there, and they're all sitting in a row, and it was very informal and relaxed. So I sat on a chair like I'm doing now, and I just basically talked to them about autism and women, and then they asked me questions. It went on for about an hour. I'm going to get paid for it, which is good, a little bit of pocket money, which is always nice. And they also would like me to come back in future to give some more talks, and also maybe to talk, and also maybe also to talk to some of the students who actually use the resource base, some of the autistic students who use the support base, that I might go in future and maybe talk to them, just so that they can see an adult woman who's autistic like them. I think that would be quite beneficial for them, because the majority of the students who use the resource base are male. I can't remember 100%, but I think they said that they've only got about 2 or 3, might have only been about 2, I can't quite remember the figure, but anyway, hardly any, just a couple of girls with autism who use the base. That's kind of like, in a sense, standard, I guess, across the country. I'd like to think things are changing, but it just goes to show that, in an autism base, the majority are just still male. So, that just is that statistic, that more boys, men are being diagnosed with women and girls, that's really played out there. And many of the boys at this resource base, I've been told, actually, are quite, they want to know, why aren't there any other autistic girls here? Why aren't there any girls? So that's part of the reason why I think it'd be quite good for me to go in and talk to them as an autistic female. Interestingly, one of the teachers at the school is autistic, and he was in the audience as I gave the talk, and that was quite interesting. I think he said he was diagnosed when he was 4, but only after he'd had some sort of epic meltdown or something, which again just goes to show that, if you don't have a meltdown, if you don't have an epic meltdown, if you don't really act out your behaviours, it's a lot harder to get diagnosed, which is kind of really perverse and ironic when you think about it, that has to happen to get a diagnosis. But that was interesting. He said he's already talked to some of the students at the base, but yet it would be quite good for a woman to go in and speak to them as well. So that would be really interesting. Hopefully that'll be sometime in the new year. So so I talked to them all about my experiences. I gave them quite a lot of information, so I talked to them about diagnosis, research and statistics, a little bit about that. I talked to them a little bit about behaviour stereotypes. I talked to them a bit about autistic behaviour in females, and some of my own experiences. Talked to them about interests, so I mentioned a bit about my obsession with Kate Winslet and my previous obsessions with babies, and how the autistic female profile in general can sometimes differ, because it can be a bit more to do with being obsessed more with, say, relational objects. I talked a bit about the effects of gender differences and late diagnosis, and then closing comments and summing up, and so it's quite in depth. So yeah, I talked a bit about my experiences at primary school. I mean, it still really shocks me to this day. I mean, I have mentioned to you this before about, you know, when I was at primary school, how it was picked up from a very young age. In actual fact, pretty much from the moment I started primary school, that I wasn't interacting with my peers. So the teachers knew this. They knew that I wasn't a conventional child. They constantly were telling my parents about things about me, you know, like why is my skills all over the place, and you know, that's what eventually led to me being assessed by that educational psychologist when I was 9, who in her report, you know, mentioned things such as interaction difficulties, you know, the fact that teachers had noticed I had poor eye contact, that I wasn't interacting with my peers, that I preferred to play with much younger children, that my skills were all over the place, you know, that I could read really well but had really poor comprehension, that I wasn't understanding what I was reading, of course, because of things like metaphor and irony and all those sort of hidden subplots that is kind of quite, you know, that is basically a red flag for autism, really. But they weren't putting 2 and 2 together, you know, things like poor spatial awareness, that I had difficulties in team sports, some problems in motor skills, that physically and emotionally I was still like a little girl, and blah blah blah. So I mentioned a little bit about the report. I think they found that quite interesting, just to show, you know, and in fact also it mentioned in the report, of course, that I had nervous anxieties, that I was lacking in confidence at times. So again, if I was a boy and if I was more stereotypical and more appeared more like what the media presentation of autism is like, maybe being, you know, being really good at maths and really geeky and things like that, and maybe if I had an epic meltdown in the classroom, you know, possibly I would have been picked up a lot earlier. Instead it took until I was 21 years old for me to finally be diagnosed, and that only happened, and this I think is quite common for girls from what I've read. I think my story is far from unique. I mean, it seems to be quite common. I don't know whether that's reassuring or not. On one level it is, because at least I'm not the only one, because for a time, you know, in a sense it's quite reassuring, but just to know that I'm not the only one that faces this. But on the other hand, it is very shocking. You know, as I say, it took for me to develop OCD, and it was only because I had knowledgeable parents that got the situation going, because, you know, it was only because my parents knew about autism, only a little bit, but they knew enough about it for it to be an ether, and for me to eventually think, I wonder this could be the case, and for me to look into it a bit on my own, and then think, yes, this makes a lot of sense, and for me to then ask to be referred to the adult autism team, because the psychologist at the mental health team knew absolutely nothing about autism, and she actually told me that herself, the psychologist I was seeing at the time, knew absolutely nothing about autism. So if I hadn't taken that initiative, because I had knowledgeable parents, then, you know, I might not still have a diagnosis, and who knows where I would be right now, because I wasn't leaving the house at all at that point, because my mental health was pretty bad. So yeah, so that's just, you know, what I'm talking to you about now, and I've talked to you about this before in my videos, but I guess it's kind of just giving you a flavour of some of the things I talked about in a talk about autism and women and all the statistics and everything. So I gave them a complete rundown, a bit of facts and a bit of personal experience, and how that all ties into it. So yeah, so it was really, really very good. The only downside was coming back, the trains were a bit all over the place. Typical problem, signal failure. Yes, they really do need to sort out the trains in this country. That was quite anxiety provoking. I'm used to it though, because I've grown up on trains. My parents didn't drive, so I've grown up on trains. So, you know, I always know whenever I'm travelling somewhere, I go, is this risk? So it's, oh, here we go again. So I was kind of like stranded at the station for a bit, but luckily my support worker stayed with me. I was internally feeling quite nervous, but I kept it all internal, so outwardly I look quite calm, but that's what happens when I'm going to anxiety. I tend to sort of shut down a bit and just kind of like gritting inside, thinking bloody hell, but not really showing it. Luckily I didn't go into complete panic stations, because trains, and I tried to retain this perspective while it was happening, thinking, oh, they're bound to start running again at some point. Of course, I knew inwardly again might not happen, but I was trying not to panic. Luckily, the trains did start running up again, and my support worker stayed with me. It would have been a lot worse if she wasn't there with me, but she stayed with me, and that's really great, and I can't thank her enough for that. She stayed with me, and when the train came, she ensured I was safely on the train. And as it so happened, I was only about half an hour late. It was annoying, but like I say, here we go again. What do you expect? This is the nature of the railways. You know, whenever you're travelling somewhere on a train, I'm aware at the back of my mind that this might happen. So, but yeah, that was the one downside to the day. So I got back a little bit later than I would have liked, but not too late, but just a bit later. But yeah, other than that, it all went really well. Now, before I finish this video, I was thinking, would you like it if every time I do a video, I gave you a little random fact about myself? something, it might be, say, something that happened in my childhood, it might be something that pertains more to modern, to how I am now, but just a really random fact. Would you like that? Because I'm thinking about doing that on my videos. I was going to give you a random fact at the very start of the video, at the start of the first one, but I forgot, so I could give you a random fact now. If you like this idea, do let me know in the comment section. And also, if you would like to know any facts about me, any random facts, ask me the question. I can't guarantee I'll be able to ask all of the questions. Obviously, if the question is of a personal nature and something I don't want to disclose on camera, I will, of course, let you know. But don't let that put you off asking anything that comes to mind. I'll just let you know if I feel I'm not happy or comfortable enough to answer that question on camera. But, you won't know unless you ask. So if you've got any question you'd like to ask me, do feel free to ask me, and then I'll let you know if I feel happy enough, comfortable enough to answer that particular question. In the meantime, here's a little random fact that I feel I'd like to give you. It's a very random fact, completely random and off the wall. But when I was a kid, I used to get little packets of raisins in my lunchbox at school. You know those little red packets of raisins? I think they're the Sunblush ones. I can't remember. You know those little red packets of raisins? You might know what I'm talking about. They're very, very small little red packs of raisins, like about really small little cardboard cartons, about that small. I used to have those in my lunchbox at school. I wasn't allowed sweeties at school. My parents were always very strict about that, particularly my mum. But I treated them like sweeties. And one time, I remember very clearly, this was at the end of school, for some reason I hadn't eaten them while I was at school, maybe didn't have enough time. We hardly ever had enough time to eat our lunch at school. I remember walking home with my mum and brother, walking under a subway near where I lived, and I had this little carton of I keep on saying Smarties, not Smarties, raisins with me, and I remember sucking on the raisin and pretending that it was sweeties. I wonder if any other child ever did this, pretended that raisins were sweeties, because you can pretend they're sweeties. That's what I did. Anyway, that's a really, really random fact about completely off the wall, completely random, but I thought it might be quite fun for me to give you a little random fact about my life, past and present, in every video I do. So if you've got any questions that you'd like to find out about me, any random fact, it could be what's your favourite colour, anything like that, and as I say, I'll let you know if I'm happy or comfortable enough to answer them, and if I'm not, like I say, I will let you know, and then just ask me another fact if you'd like to that I can answer. So, I hope you have a good week in the meantime, and I very much look forward to speaking to you again next week. So thank you for watching.